What happens when a beloved soap opera star sits down for what should be a friendly conversation about his newest projects, only to find himself ambushed by a host determined to tear him down? Today, we're breaking down one of the most shocking moments in daytime TV history, when Mark Consuelos found himself in an unexpected, heated clash that left the entire studio stunned. You won't believe how quickly this interview spiraled out of control, or the moment that made Mark finally say, "Enough is enough." Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about live television. The morning began like any other at The View. Mark Consuelos arrived with his usual charm and professionalism, ready to promote his new drama series and share a few light-hearted stories with the panel. He'd appeared on the show many times before, and always enjoyed the playful banter. But today felt different the moment he stepped onto the set. "Well, well, well, look who decided to grace us with his presence," Joy Behar said as Mark sat down, her tone edged with something colder than her usual sarcasm. The audience laughed nervously, unsure whether she was joking or taking a jab. Mark kept his composure. "Always a pleasure to be here, Joy. Thanks for having me back." "Oh, we're thrilled," Joy replied, flipping through her note cards with exaggerated flair. "I'm sure our audience is dying to hear about your latest project, though I have to wonder, don't you think you're spreading yourself a bit thin? Between acting, producing, and your non-stop social media presence, when do you actually have time to perfect anything?" The question hit hard. Even the co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances. "I think staying busy keeps me sharp," Mark answered calmly. "I'm passionate about storytelling in all its forms, and I'm lucky to work with teams who make balancing everything possible." Joy smirked. Passionate about storytelling or passionate about staying relevant? Because let's be honest, Mark, soap operas aren't exactly cultural juggernauts anymore. Some people might say you're trying a little too hard to reinvent yourself. The studio fell silent. The tension was unmistakable. Mark inhaled, steadying himself. "I have tremendous respect for the soap opera genre. It taught me discipline, how to work under pressure, and how to connect with an audience. I'm proud of that foundation." "Foundation, sure," Joy cut in, waving her hand. "But don't you think it's time to admit you're basically riding Kelly's coattails at this point? Without your wife's morning show empire, would anyone really be calling you for these prime-time roles?" Gasps rippled through the audience. One co-host even covered her mouth in disbelief. Mark's expression hardened, his voice dropping low. "Excuse me?" But Joy pressed on. "Come on, Mark. Kelly is a household name. She has real influence." "You're what? Her supportive husband who gets the occasional opportunity because of her? There's no shame in that, but let's not pretend this is all about you." Mark sat perfectly still for a moment before responding. "Joy, I came here to talk about my work, my projects, and my experience in this industry. I didn't come here to be disrespected, or to have my marriage used as ammunition." "Oh, disrespected?" Joy laughed sharply. "This is The View. We ask real questions here, not celebrity puff pieces. If a little scrutiny rattles you, maybe you should stick to the controlled environments where you get to play pretend." Camera operators began zooming in, sensing the gravity of the moment. Mark leaned forward. "Joy, I've worked in this business for over 2 decades. I've earned every role through preparation, professionalism, and yes, talent. Reducing my career to some kind of nepotism narrative says more about your mindset than it does about my work." Joy's eyes lit up with something that resembled triumph. 2 decades of what, exactly?" Joy fired back. "Playing the same brooding character over and over again?" "Mark, let's be honest about your range. You've got one speed, handsome and intense, and you've been milking it since the 90s. At what point do we admit that maybe, just maybe, you've hit your ceiling?" The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Mark stared at her, and something fundamental shifted in his expression. the polite, media-trained exterior began to crack, revealing something far more real and far more dangerous beneath it. When Mark finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that made the entire studio sit up straighter. "You know what's interesting, Joy? I've been nothing but respectful to you and this show every time I've been here. I've answered your questions honestly. I've played along with the jokes, even when they weren't particularly funny. But right now, you're not interviewing me. You're attacking me." Joy scoffed, but something in Mark's tone made her posture tighten. "Attacking you? Please, I'm asking legitimate questions about your career. If you can't handle professional discourse, maybe television interviews aren't for you." "Professional discourse," Mark repeated, eyebrows rising. "Is that what you call questioning my talent, dismissing my work, and reducing my entire career to who I'm married to? Because where I come from, that's called being deliberately cruel." The co-hosts were visibly uncomfortable now. One attempted to steer the conversation back to Mark's new show, but Joy shut her down with a sharp gesture. "Cruel? Oh, that's rich," Joy snapped. "You want to talk about cruelty? How about the way this industry props up mediocre white men while actual talent gets ignored? How about people who get opportunities they haven't earned while others fight for scraps? But sure. Let's worry about hurting the feelings of someone who's never struggled a day in his privileged life." Mark's eyes flickered, not just at the words, but at the venom behind them. "Privileged? Joy, you don't know anything about my background, my life, or what I had to overcome. You're making assumptions based on what, exactly? How I look? The fact that I'm married to someone successful?" "I'm making observations based on reality," Joy snapped. "Look around, Mark. Look at who gets the roles, who gets the chances, who gets the benefit of the doubt, even when they're not good enough. You think you've just landed on your feet by pure talent? Really?" The studio was dead silent now. Everyone knew they were witnessing something far beyond an awkward talk show moment. Mark gripped the arms of his chair, knuckles white. "You want to talk about privilege and opportunity? Fine, but don't sit there and pretend you know my story, or that you're the judge of who deserves what. You want to talk about unearned opportunities? Then tell me, how did you earn the right to tear down a guest on your own show?" Joy's face flushed. Whether with anger or embarrassment, no one could tell. "I earned my place by speaking truth to power," she said. "By refusing to bow down to celebrity worship. If you can't handle someone questioning your narrative, that's on you." "Questioning?" Mark's voice rose slightly, the first crack in his control. "You're not questioning anything. You're insulting me. You're attacking my work, my marriage, my character. You smile like it's some kind of public service. But this isn't journalism. It's bullying, with cameras rolling." Joy leaned in, eyes blazing. "Bullying? Bullying is when people like you take spaces that should go to more deserving artists. Bullying is when the industry rewards pretty faces over talent. Bullying is failing upward, while others can't even get a first shot. So excuse me if I'm not moved by your poor me act." Mark's composure, already strained, finally began to unravel. "You know what, Joy?" he said quietly, fury threading his voice. "I came here as a professional, as a guest. I showed you respect, but clearly respect isn't something you're interested in giving. You want to make this personal? Fine. But don't pretend it's about accountability or journalism. This is about you taking your anger out on someone who can't fight back without being labeled the villain." Joy didn't flinch. "Can't fight back? Mark, you're a grown man with a platform, so fight back. Defend yourself. Prove me wrong. Show me this incredible talent that supposedly justifies all these opportunities. Because right now, all I'm seeing is someone who folds the moment he faces real pressure." Mark stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped harshly across the studio floor. The sharp sound cut through the tension like a blade, and several audience members visibly flinched. The camera zoomed in instinctively, capturing every shift in his expression as he towered over the panel. "You want to see me defend myself?" he said, his voice thick with controlled menace. "Here's your defense, Joy. I've spent 25 years in this business building a reputation on preparation, respect, and hard work. I've never used my platform to tear down another professional the way you're tearing down me right now. I've never hidden behind tough journalism to justify cruelty towards someone who trusted me enough to sit here and be vulnerable." Joy remained seated, but something in her posture changed. She leaned back slightly, as if the force behind his words pushed her away. "So what are you saying, Mark?" she shot back. "That I'm not doing my job? That asking tough questions makes me the villain here?" "I'm saying there's a difference between tough questions and bullying," Mark replied, his voice echoing across the now silent studio. "I'm saying you crossed a line today, one that has nothing to do with journalism and everything to do with whatever personal issues you're working through. And I'm saying I'm done letting you use me as your punching bag." The silence that followed was suffocating. Joy stared up at him, stunned for a moment, as if she hadn't expected him to snap back with such force. But instead of retreating, something darker flickered across her face. A spark of escalation. "Personal issues," Joy repeated slowly, rising from her chair with a disdainful smile. "You want to talk about personal issues? Let's talk about how your entire public persona is built around being the perfect husband, the family man with everything figured out. But what happens when the cameras stop rolling? What happens when you're not performing? Because I've heard some very interesting stories about what you're like behind closed doors." Mark's face went pale. Her implication hung between them like poison, thick enough to choke the room. Even the audience seemed to be holding its breath. "What exactly are you suggesting, Joy?" he asked. Joy's smile sharpened, cold and deliberate. "I'm not suggesting anything, Mark. I'm simply saying public personas don't always match private realities, and maybe some of us are tired of pretending celebrities are exactly who they claim to be on social media and red carpets." "You're crossing a line," Mark said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "You're making insinuations about my family, about my personal life, without a shred of truth. This isn't journalism, it's character assassination." Joy shrugged with theatrical indifference. "I'm just pointing out that maybe the public deserves to know who they're really supporting. Maybe they deserve to know if the image matches the reality." Mark stepped closer to the panel, fists clenched tight at his sides. "You have absolutely no right to sit there making veiled accusations about my family. None. You want to criticize my work? Fine. You want to question my talent? I can handle that. But the moment you start dragging my marriage, my role as a husband, as a father, into this, you've gone too far." "Have I?" Joy asked, clearly savoring the impact. "Or did I just hit a nerve? Because you're awfully defensive for someone who supposedly has nothing to hide." The other co-hosts were now visibly panicked. One of them attempted to intervene. "Maybe we should take a commercial break and—" Joy ignored her completely. "You know what, Mark? You came on this show acting like a victim because I asked you a few hard questions. But maybe the real question is why you're so terrified of having your life examined. Maybe the real question is what you're afraid people might find out." Mark's composure finally fractured. When he spoke, his voice was raw and shaking with fury. "You want to know what I'm afraid of, Joy? I'm afraid of people like you. People who use their platforms to destroy others for entertainment. People who think tearing someone down makes them more important, more relevant." "Oh, please," Joy scoffed. "Spare me the righteous act. You're not a victim, Mark. You're just a mediocre actor finally being called out for what you really are." Mark stared at her for a long, tense moment. And then something shifted, his expression softening, the anger fading into something that looked eerily like pity. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but drenched in disgust. "You know what the saddest part is, Joy?" Mark said, his voice low but unwavering. "I actually respected you once. I thought you were sharp, funny, someone who brought real value to television. But watching you now, watching how much enjoyment you get out of trying to tear me apart, I realize I was completely wrong about who you really are." Joy's expression hardened instantly. "Don't you dare stand there and tell me who I am," she snapped. "You know nothing about me, nothing about what I've had to fight through in this industry or what I've had to become just to survive." "You're right," Mark said with a slow nod. "I don't know your past. I don't know your struggles. But I know exactly what I'm seeing in front of me. And what I'm seeing is someone so bitter, so angry, that any success that isn't yours feels like a threat. I'm seeing someone who confuses cruelty with honesty and thinks hurting people makes you powerful." The words hit her hard, visibly. For the first time since the confrontation began, Joy looked shaken. "You don't know what you're talking about," she muttered, but the conviction was gone. Mark didn't stop. He was already moving around the table toward the exit. "Actually," he said without looking back, "I think everyone watching knows exactly what I'm talking about. You showed them today. I hope it was worth it." "Where do you think you're going?" Joy demanded, her voice climbing, edged with something close to panic. "We're in the middle of an interview." Mark turned, his face cold and final. "No, Joy, we're in the middle of an ambush, and I'm done letting you use me as your punching bag. I came here to talk about my work, to connect with the people who watch your show, to be a good guest. But you wanted a spectacle. You wanted headlines. Well, congratulations, you got them." He started walking again. "You can't just walk off," Joy shouted. "This is live television. You have an obligation to finish this interview." Mark paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "The only obligation I have is to myself and my family. And right now, that obligation is telling me to get as far away from you as possible before I say something I will regret." Joy lurched to her feet, her chair skidding backward. "This is exactly what I mean," she yelled. "Entitled people like you can't handle real scrutiny, so you run." Mark looked at her one last time. "Joy, I've dealt with real scrutiny my entire career. What you did today wasn't scrutiny. It was a hit job. And the fact that you can't tell the difference says everything anyone needs to know about your credibility." With that, Mark Consuelos walked out of the View studio, leaving behind stunned co-hosts, a silent audience, and Joy Behar standing alone, flushed with anger. And something that looked a lot like shame. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second as the weight of what happened settled over everyone. The silence that followed was unlike anything the show had ever seen. An instant moment in television history that people would talk about for years. What did you think of this unbelievable confrontation? Ever seen a celebrity defend themselves like this on live TV? Make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more shocking entertainment moments.